Hello everybody, and welcome to the very first video on this channel that has to do with non-military aviation. What this channel is going to do is share with you and bring to you some pretty unique adventures. We're going to be utilizing corporate jets like the Citation Longitude, but we're also going to be utilizing other aircraft such as general aviation aircraft as well as commercial airline aircraft, and the other type of video that we're going to be doing will be the third and fourth generation fighter jets in DCS world. And that's what we're going to do in teaching you various things about specific aircraft and really how they fly, how to fly them correctly. With right here at Microsoft License 2024, what we're going to do, we're simply going to be utilizing some unique features in the background, such as Microsoft Copilot. So with Microsoft Copilot, I think we're going to be ready to go. So Copilot, can you say hello?
Hey everyone, excited to be part of this journey with you all. Let's dive into the world of flight together.
All right, thank you for that, Copilot.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
All right, everybody, the first thing we're going to do is simply going to remove the pitot cover. We're going to be utilizing disabling the wheel shocks. And the last thing that we have to do is walk around to the back side of the jet and remove the engine covers. And as soon as that's over, everybody, we're going to get into the flight deck and set it up for a quick flight up to Honolulu. Now, you may be wondering where we are right now. We are in Kona, which Copilot, could you tell the audience the significance of Kona International Airport in Hawaii?
Sure thing. Kona International Airport on the Big Island of Hawaii is known for its open-air design and for being one of the major gateways to the Hawaiian Islands. It serves as a hub for tourists exploring Hawaii's natural beauty, including volcanic landscapes, stunning beaches, and rich cultural heritage.
And now that we're in the flight deck, welcome aboard, everybody. And Copilot, what is the distance from Kona to Honolulu?
The distance from Kona to Honolulu is roughly 170 miles, or about 270 kilometers. Should make for a nice scenic flight.
All right, and for those people who are more into aviation than others, what is the distance in nautical miles?
Great question. The distance from Kona to Honolulu in nautical miles is approximately 148 nautical miles. Happy flying!
All right, everybody. Now, I could allow Copilot to give us the checklist for our startup, but we're going to make this very, very simple for all of you. The first thing you want to do, as you can see, I removed the yoke because the yoke is not necessary. I happen to have one. So having the yoke in the sim is simply blocks, buttons, and switches that we have to access. And on top of that, you don't need to see one. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to turn on both the left and right batteries. As you can see, that begins to turn on the initiation of the Garmin G5000 avionics suite. We're also going to turn on the standby power. And the next thing that we're going to do, come up on the overhead and turn on the seatbelt sign, passenger safety sign, and we're going to arm our emergency lights. So, all right. Now, while things are still getting aligned, let's go ahead and begin to plug in the necessary information for the flight. During the flight, even though it will be a short one, during the flight we're going to be talking about things such as really what this channel is all about. and how unique and different it's going to be from any other channel on YouTube. So, at the moment, for the moment, and as you can see, a lot of people do ask, if you look at the PFD, which stands for Primary Flight Display, both PFDs, as you can see, is giving us what's called synthetic vision.
System test. Okay.
All right, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is that simply gives you greater situational awareness when you're taxiing, in particular, out to a runway when the visibility is low. So that comes in handy. So we're going to go ahead and go into weight and fuel here on the initialization page of the FMS.
Sounds good. Setting the
Now, sometimes Copilot tends to talk a little bit when I'm trying to talk. That's fine. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our operating weight. So, as you can see, a caution just came up and it says battery discharge left. That's because the avionics are taking quite a drain on the left battery and eventually the right battery. So, we're going to be starting the APU. And where is that located? It's located right over here on the bottom of the central console. And we're going to move that to switch to start. It will spring back to on. And you can see how the APU is now running up. If you look back on the PFD on my side, you'll see it says fuel boost pump on right. So by the time we get ready for taxi, the right wing will have less fuel in it than the left wing. All right. Copilot, maybe you can explain to everybody how they could switch from utilizing the right fuel tank and the left fuel tank. Let's see if Copilot, are you still there? Well, that's one of the limitations. Copilot eventually goes away. We'll reactivate her in just a little bit. All right, our operating weight looks good. Basic operating weight, 24,089 pounds. That's fine. Crew and storage, 700. That's fine. And again, 24,089 pounds is fine. Payload, 8 passengers at 185 pounds. That's fine. No cargo. This is just a very quick flight to show you how to operate this aircraft in a very efficient manner. Takeoff. We're going to have FOB sync, and that will automatically plug in the amount of fuel that is on board. There we go. Now, if you look on the right FMS, the FMS that belongs to the FO, first officer, you can now see that the weight and fuel task is now completed. There's a green check mark in that box. The next thing that we now go into is landing. But as of now, we're not going to do that because we're not ready for landing yet, because who knows what can happen between here and there. But we do have a fuel reserve of 250 gallons, and that is estimating a holding time that it'll give us 30 minutes, which is fine. So we click on next. Now we're going to add the origin, and the origin, we're in Kona, as we said earlier, PHKO. So let's simply type in PHKO. Then there it is. Enter. And now the avionics knows where we are. Destination is going to be Honolulu International Airport, which is Papa Hotel November Lima. And enter. Now the reason very quickly The reason we're not utilizing live weather, we're not utilizing live traffic, we're not utilizing ATC that is built into 2024, and that is because, as many of you know, I should say those of you that utilize this simulator, you understand that the developers at Microsoft and Asobo, they have a long way to go in fixing a lot of things that need to be fixed. So, that being said, that is the reason why we're not going to be utilizing real weather or live traffic and things like that. Even though my internet connection is almost just shy of half of 1 gigabyte per second, things are still happening, or they have a potential to happen, which would make this video go away. So we're going to be taking off to the north to make it a little easier for those of you wanting to understand how to fly this particular aircraft. And obviously we're going to be teaching you on this channel how to fly a multitude of airplanes that are in my virtual hangar, so to speak. So runway 35. Now our destination, Honolulu. We're going to pull that up by clicking on it. Over here on the left, you'll see a button that says PROC. That means that's short for procedure. Click on procedures, and we're going to go to approach. And I'll be darned, there it is. That is the runway that we want to use. 04 right, and this will be the ILS Yankee 04 right. Transition will be vectors, and you'll see how if I load this correctly, how seamlessly it'll transition from the FMS flying the airplane over to intercepting the localizer and the glide slope. And if we program everything right to begin with, it should all work out very nicely for us. Minimums, that'll be minimums for when we land. We can go and put that in there. We're going to use the radio altimeter instead of the barometric altimeter. And we're going to set that up for 450 feet above the ground. So 450, enter, and we don't have to think about it. With regard to the approach, we are going to just click on load. And it says GPS guidance is for monitoring only load approach. Okay. And that is now in the flight computer. On the way up to Honolulu, we will be filling in those boxes for specific speed and altitude points at each individual navigational fix, and we'll be going over that in just a moment. As soon as we get into the air and we tell the autopilot to take over. Alright, we're going to click on next. Now we're ready for the takeoff data. And the Garmin G5000 suite makes this extremely simple. Origin tab, we simply have to make sure that, yep, PHKO is where we are. Runway 35, yep, that's the runway we are going to be utilizing for takeoff. Now we're going to click on the weather tab, and even though there's no weather of any kind, and we know that because if we look over here on the PFD over here on our left, 29.92 inches of mercury, or for those of you who utilize a metric system, that would be 1013 or 1013 hectopascals. But here in North America, we utilize the linear system for this. And 29.92 inches of mercury, which gives us 40 feet above sea level, which is technically the airport is 38 feet above sea level, but we're not simply going to split hairs over 2 feet. All right, so we're going to load the METAR wind, which that is obviously not the case, 211 at 9. The wind is technically as follows, 360, enter, and the wind speed is actually none. So we just hit 0. Temperature, we're going to let the the outside air temperature load itself. So we click on Use RAT, and there it is, 15 degrees Celsius, or some of you may say 15 degrees centigrade. If we were utilizing live, real-world weather, we can say show METAR, and there it is. So obviously that is incorrect, but that does show you how you can access the METAR information from the airport that you're wanting to know. Now, we're at the next step. And as you can see, this is very intuitive on Garmin's part. We're going to click on the runway tab, and we're just simply verifying. Let's very quickly look at runway 36. I'm sorry, runway 35 here on the left side. PHKO, yep, that's where we are. Runway 35, and the length of the runway is 11,003 feet. Runway elevation is 36 feet. Now that's another great way to cross-check your barometric altitude setting with this showing 40, and the runway elevation is only 4 feet shy of 40, so we know we're in the ballpark. Not only in the ballpark, we are very, very accurate. Since this is a very short flight, we're going to leave runway gradient at, leave it where it is. We're not going to get into anything with regard to calculations. If I were to wake up a co-pilot, maybe she could run the calculation, but I've tried that before, and she doesn't quite know how to handle it, but that's okay. And again, these are all good. Runway heading, again, 355. So what do? Let's go ahead and dial that into the autopilot. So 355, there's our heading. Knob, 355 is now in the box. That is very, very important to do in case you have to take a emergency with you into the air after V1, and we'll get to that in just a second. At least the autopilot is ready to fly the runway heading, and then we can be vectored around by ATC as necessary, depending on the problem that we would have to take up into the air with us again, and that's after V1. So, takeoff configuration. Click on that tab, and now let's look at what we have. Flaps 1, anti-ice is off. Now, one quick word about anti-ice and the Garmin G5000 as it is married up to the Citation Longitude. The anti-ice system is automated, and what you're going to see, you're going to hear a little chime in the background as we begin to taxi, and it'll pop up right up here in the information box here, where you may call the CAS, C-A-S, Crew Alert System. And very briefly, you'll hear, again, you hear a little chime noise, and it'll say down here, anti-ice on. What that means is it's automatically turning on the anti-ice detection system. So if it did detect any anti-ice, it would know how to turn on both the anti-ice for the engines as well as the leading edge of the wings. Takeoff pack, thrust reversers are stowed. We'll be talking about thrust reverse later in this episode. Rolling takeoff, that is actually going to be a yes. We are going to do a rolling takeoff. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just as soon as we get out to the runway. Alright, let's look at these here, this information. V1, as we were talking about earlier, just a couple minutes ago. V1, that is our decision speed. Do we take the plane into the air or not? If anything happens to the aircraft prior to V1, we can bring the airplane to a safe stop on the runway. Once we reach V1, we are committed for takeoff. Rotate, that is the speed at which we will be pulling back on the yoke so we can take the airplane into the air. V2, that is our safety speed, which is our minimum speed for maneuvering the aircraft. And VFTO, that just simply means that is speed at which I'll double check to make sure the flaps are up, and I also use it to make sure that the landing gear is up as well. Okay, so we're going to accept these takeoff speeds. Now, if we look on the left PFD on my side of the flight deck, you'll see at the bottom of the speed tape here it says V-speeds in yellow. That means that the V-speeds have not yet been loaded into the computer. So let's accept takeoff speed by clicking accept takeoff speeds. As you can see, now we have 4 hash marks on the bottom of the speed tape. FTO to R1, or if you're going from bottom up, 1, which is V1, R, which is rotate, 2, which is V2, and FTO. These numbers over here in the FMS, they will not show up over here on the PFD until the flaps are set to, in this case, 1. So let's go ahead and do that, because we don't need the engines running to set the flaps. And now you can see those 4 fields are now populated with those numbers. All right. Looking good, looking good. And we're going to click on the check mark. Everything is good. All 3 major tasks are completed. Weight and fuel, flight plan itself, and the takeoff data. One question that you may have, and it's a question that I had for a while, on the overhead panel, where is the button for the navigation lights and the beacon light? I couldn't find it. Well, come to find out, here is where they are. If we go to Home and we click on Aircraft Systems, there is a little button here available now for exterior lights. Navigation on, so those lights, navigation lights are on, with the red light on the tip of the left wing and a green light on the right tip of the right wing. Beacon, normal. What does that mean? Well, as soon as we begin to initiate the engine startup sequence for the right engine in this case, or you can start the left engine if you want first, but I always start right first and then the left because my background comes from the airline industry more than corporate jets by a long shot. We'll be talking about that in another episode here on Fly Adventures. So, and the third setting here is pulse with TCAS TARA. That just simply means that the beacon will be pulsing and it'll be, in other words, basically saying there's nothing for us to think about. It has it under control automatically. Okay? So, we are all the way to our pre-takeoff checklist. And let's simply see if we can utilize Copilot. Well, you know what, we won't. We'll just leave Copilot out of the equation for this first episode. I'd have to opt out of 2024 first real quick, open it, reactivate it, and we don't want to do that. We simply want to get this flight done in a very proper manner, following the checklist, which I have in this case, because I've flown this enough, I know the checklist very well. We're going to set our left FMS before we do anything. We're going to leave that to flight plan. That's always a very good thing to do, and I will explain the reason as to why in just a little bit. Let's look at our engine startup age. Sorry about that. I would be utilizing the Tobii iTracker 5. However, as those of you who have Tobii iTracker, Microsoft and Asobo, they're still working on a fix for it because it simply doesn't work for Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. So we're going to start at the right engine first. We're going to open the cover, and then we're going to hit this stop and run button. We're going to click it once, and now it goes to run. There is a button, as you can see, it says engine starter. The button immediately to the left, which corresponds with the letter R, which means right. We're going to hold this button down for 1 second, just as the pop-up is saying. 1, and it turns into a barber pole. That's what those little marks are called, barber pole. And we should be able to see and hear that engine beginning to spool up. There it goes. Very good. I know with regard to realism, the engines technically don't start up this quickly, but we'll take it given all of the other problems that Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 has. We will gladly take it. Alright, it is stable. And we were watching the ITT for a hot start, and that obviously didn't happen. So we did not have to deal with an overtemp issue. Alright, going back down to the center pedestal, making sure the cover is closed on that one. Open the cover for the left engine. Click it to run. And we're going to hold on that left starter for 1 second. Let go. Barber pole. And into rotation. Here comes the fuel into the combustion chamber. There's the light off. Looking for an overtemp. Don't think that's going to happen today. And the start sequence is off. And we are ready to go. Let's look at a couple other things very quickly before we begin to roll. We're going to set our altitude for our cruise, which is going to be 22,000 feet. And with this aircraft, with not a lot of weight, we're going to reach 22,000 feet in probably 9 minutes or a little less. So, in order to go up, as you can see, it's going up in increments of 1,000 feet. You can change that by using your mouse and clicking on it with your right mouse button. So for right now, we're going to run this all the way up to 22. Right click once, and then scroll back 22,000 even. The other thing that we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and turn on the flight director. And the other thing we're going to do is come back down here, turn on the auto throttle. We're going to arm the auto throttle. And we're going to turn off the APU. We no longer need it. And APU in this airplane shuts down relatively quickly. So now that we have those things up and running, what we're going to do, we're going to show you, we're going to go through the aircraft systems before we taxi cabin management. Those lights do not need to be on. Temperature, we have it set to a very comfortable 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Cabin pressure is going to be normal, and it'll be handling that automatically, and we'll make sure that it's doing it right as we climb out, especially above 10,000 feet. We'll look up here on the FFD under cabin altitude, and we'll simply make sure that the aircraft begins to pressurize. A very, very important thing to do. A couple of years ago in the real world, which is where I began flying over 30 years ago. In the real world, just a couple of years ago, a Citation was not pressurizing. The pilots were not monitoring that, and the end result was a tragedy. So you always want to make sure that the airplane is pressurizing, even though it's an automated system. We'll keep an eye on that. All right, we've realized the exterior lights, and they're where they need to be. And propulsion, FADEC, which is full authority digital engine computer. It's set to normal on the engine ignition, FADEC control, both using the A computer. And like I say, display engine units up there on top, which we do want with regard to our ITT. Go back one. Now let's go to the Synoptics tab, Electrical. And as you can see, everything is good. In another video, we'll get into the technical aspects of that, but we're just looking for green and making sure that what is connected is connected. Hydraulics, good. Fuel, 3,580 on the left, and as I see, about 80 pounds short on the right, and we can balance that out if we want, but that is not required because the difference isn't that much. Anti-ice, we just talked about that a few minutes ago. It's not going to be required, but then again, it is controlled automatically. Bleed air, and then simply shows you where the heat exchange is happening from the engines as the thing goes up into our recirculation fan, which is set to low, and how that heat exchange as it goes up into the cabin cools the air down, in this case set to 70. So in blue, if you will, the color is set to 70, and the white number, CUR, which means current, currently is also 70. So everybody's working good. Flight controls. Let's check those out. All the way to the left, good. All the way to the right, good. Elevator, all the way back, good. And elevators all the way down, good. And hop on the rudders here, pedals, all the way to the left, good. Neutral, all the way to the right, good. And back to neutral. Flight controls work out. Now let's look at a summary, making sure everything is good to go. Sorry, pre-flight. Pre-flight, everything except the parking brake, which is and our stabilizer trim. Okay, the stabilizer trim, we're going to be doing this with it. We're going to be the stabilizer trim that it's talking about. Of course, this check is right here underneath the flap and speed brake, or you could say spoiler indicator. And as you can see, it says stab 0.0, and that number along with the corresponding arrow is yellow. We're going to move that down to a green number, and it tends to work out pretty good with this weight, somewhere around negative 3.0. There we go. Parking brake. We're actually ready for taxi, so we can release the parking brake. And everything should be, the status of everything is okay. Alright, we're going to go back to home. We're going to turn on the, we can turn on weather, but there isn't any weather. We'll just leave it on map. And let me see here. Well, we can do weather, even though there isn't any. We can simply leave it to that. That's fine. And we'll get into the utilities, performance, waypoint info, and nearest. We'll get into that at a later video. This flight is going to make it to Honolulu pretty quickly. So, what we need to do is simply turn on the taxi light. And the other necessary lights will be turned on as we're holding short of the runway here. Okay. Everything else is good to go. And let's go ahead and zoom out. Oh, it says 200 knots. Technically, we should have it set to 128 if we were in a commercial jetliner, like a 737 MAX or the 747-8, both of which I do know how to operate. With this one, since it's such a short flight and there's no air traffic, we're going to set number 1, our speed mode to manual, and we're going to set that number 2 235. And we do this so we do not exceed the speed limit of 250 knots indicated above, at or above 10,000 feet. And we're going to be utilizing the flight level change on that one. So in other words, the aircraft will climb to our cruise altitude at that speed that we just dialed in. Okay. That is it for getting everything up and ready for a taxi. So let's go ahead and move up. And that vehicle is like a GPU, should not be there. But that's one of the many things that hopefully Microsoft and Sobo are working on for the next update. Okay, so just a little bit of power to get us going, and the tug to the left shouldn't be there either, but it is. And even though I do have realistic settings turned on, the wing taxis right through it. Okay, that brief little caution was the automated anti-ice system telling us that it is on. What I will show you is the proper radio communication that you would put out if there were air traffic. Okay, we're taxiing pretty good. Idle. Let's turn on the brief stop right here. Only short of 35. We're going to come up to the overhead panel. Turn on the landing lights. Pulse lights, that's okay. Turn those on and turn on the anti-collision lights. We are ready to go. There's one thing we're not direct to a specific navigation fix. Let's see why that is. Oh, it's not going directly to YepGoo. Okay, we'll go YepGoo, direct, yes, activate that. This simply makes our life a little easier. Again, we can get away with that because we're not utilizing air traffic control, ATC. Now, if we were and there wasn't a tower here, we would say the following. Kona traffic, citation 80824 Charlie Lima, departing runway 35 for a straight out departure, Kona traffic. And that's what you would say. So, let's get on there to the runway. Following the yellow line is it is important. It just helps keep you right on the money with regard to lining up with the center line of the runway. There we go. And we're going to slowly advance the throttles forward, and then the auto throttle will take over. And you'll notice that in the upper left corner of the PFD. It'll go from TO to hold. There we have it. And now the auto throttle is controlling the engines. There's V1 and rotate. Okay, add a little more trim to that. Positive rate, gear up. Thank you. Yeah, I know that parking brake comes on whenever you retract or extend the landing gear, which is a very, very, very annoying thing. One of the many things that Microsoft and Sobo need to fix. Alright, we're going to begin on left bank to get going on our way here. Turn off the parking brake. And there we go, flaps up. And we are going to go ahead and bring the aircraft level. For some odd reason, you got to give it a little more input than you should need to in order to get the airplane in the proper bank angle that you're wanting. So what we're going to do, we're going to arm the arm nav. And push that nose over just a little bit. And we're going to arm the FLC, which is fly level change, and turn on the autopilot. The aircraft is set for climb, but we're going to set this back up for 235 knots. And as you can see, it is flying the flight plan as we programmed it to. And we have a distance of 141 nautical miles to go. And we're now already above 10,000 feet. So we're going to turn off our landing lights. And we're going to look at the pressurization. Remember what I said? 10,000 feet, begin to look at the pressurization. And as you can see, cabin altitude, 750 feet. A landing elevation of 10. But what we want to look at is cabin altitude. So currently we have an 800 foot cabin, 850 feet now, 800 feet above sea level cabin. It is climbing at 500 feet per minute, and our difference of pressure is 5.8 psi. And if we look over at the PFD, already passing through 15,000 feet, and everything is looking good. Looking very good. Once we reach 18,000 feet, which is going to come up very quickly, we have to put the calibration of the altimeter, which is right at the bottom of the altitude tape, currently set to 29.92 inches of mercury. Once we reach 18,000, which is right now, we're going to right click this knob, and that gives us a standard barometric pressure, which is what you do anywhere on the planet. It's a universal rule, because the air begins to get very thin, and a barometric pressure is pretty much meaningless, 18,000 feet and above. Making sure that over here on the first officer's PFD, it also says standard baro, which means standard barometric pressure setting. And on the backup, push it as well. And that just reaffirms that we are at standard. Alright, we're going to take our speed over to FMS now and hit the VNAV button. And now the aircraft will begin to really accelerate out. I could have done that immediately upon passing 10,000 feet, but it is fun to get up to our cruising altitude in less than 5 minutes from setting the takeoff thrust. So pretty impressive. We've now been in the air for precisely 5 minutes, and again we're already at flight level 220 and or 22,000 feet. And it looks like it's automatically calculated that 320 knots is what we want to do. And it turns yellow, and it should go back to white here in just a couple seconds. Yep. So even though it's utilizing knots as the number, the other thing that you always want to keep in mind is, especially with 18,000 feet, as you get up into the upper flight levels, your indicated airspeed actually becomes less and less accurate because, again, the atmosphere becomes very, very thin. So what we want to do is we want to look at our speed in reference to our Mach number. So right now, Mach number is 0.72, technically 0.721. And that is the number that we utilize with regard to our speed when we're above 18,000 feet, Mach 0.72, which is pretty good. And it reached that, and we've been, when I started the clock on my yoke, when I say takeoff power, I activated the timer function. We have now been operating from takeoff thrust to now. We've only been operating the jet for 6 minutes and 50 seconds. Not bad, 22,000 feet and Mach 0.72. That is really making some really, really good time. Let's move over to the FMS again in a flight plan. We need to put in some numerical values here. So for YEPGU, the speed constraint, let me just double check something here real quick. We need to look up at our MFD at our map. We need more than a 10 nautical mile arc. We need it to be, we need to see the island of, alright, alright, that's all going to happen very quickly. So what we're going to do is, let's go back once, 3,000, so it already knows if you look over here under ALT, let me zoom in for you. Alright, if you look at ALT, that's like, well, let me rephrase. Believe it or not, ALT is a column. So is FPA/speed. Altitude for YEPGU, it wants to pass at 3,000. We have to hit it, that it's navigational fix, 3,976 feet above sea level. We're going to click this on the right, this button right here, and we're going to say speed constraint is going to be 190 knots. Indicated airspeed, which is what that is, IAS, very, very important, not Mach, IAS. And the type is going to be at. So when we hit YEPGO, we need the plane to be at a speed of 190 knots. Okay, so hit enter. Now we're going to scroll down, hit the down button. And for debris, already set for 2,000 feet. We're going to set that up for 160 knots. Again, because a lot of things are going to happen very quickly when we get down there. In order to shoot the approach in the runway 04 right. Pearly, we need to hit that. Navigation fix at 1,500 feet. FPA speed is going to be, it needs to be at 145 knots is what that needs to be at. And we make sure that the type is at, not above or below, but at 145 knots. Units has to be IAS, indicator speed. Always make sure that's what you're doing when you're below 18,000 feet. Alright, which by that time we will be. So everything is set, and we go back, keep the flight plan pulled up actually, and let's see how far are we from TOD. Now if you look on the left map, TOD, that's right here, that stands for top of descent. And we are reaching that number, that phase. we are reaching a phase quicker than you actually think. Mach 0.72, pretty fast. And again, the distance between uh, the two airports it's I believe co-pilot said it was roughly 143 nautical miles. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set the altitude selector on the autopilot to 2,000 feet. So let's do that right now. I'll need to right click the knob. Now it'll go in increments of 1,000 feet. Alright. So for 2,000 feet, make sure that your speed mode is set to FMS and not manual. And that the VNAV, which stands for vertical navigation, is set to on. That way, as soon as you reach your top of descent, you're going to begin to descend. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is set up our speeds with regard to our approach speed. So on the left, what I would typically do if I were talking to ATC, I would be utilizing this panel on my left a lot more. But we need to set the speed bugs for landing. So let's do that. So we're going to click on speed bugs, landing. 137 is the approach speed, and our VREV speed for landing is 125 knots. Both of those are correct. So we're going to touch this button right here, all on. Watch what happens when I do that over here on the PFD. At the bottom of the speed tape, you're going to see those two values pop up over here. There we go. So approach speed 137 knots, again indicated, and our VREF 125 knots. Okay. And we're good to go on that front. That little ding ding you just heard, that's simply the G5000 telling us top of descent within 1 minute, and we do know that. And it looks like it's going to be aiming for an initial descent rate of 2,000 feet per minute, right there, or a little more than that. And it will automatically make those calculations. It's nothing you have to think about whatsoever. Now, the other thing I want you to be aware of is because whenever you're flying, and I'll get into this when I begin to fly like the Cessna 172 for people out there that want things to be a little less complex, you always want to make sure that the autopilot, as well as yourself, that your navigation is set correctly to the proper and correct phase of flight. We still need to be flying via the FMS, which is what it's doing. However, and as you can see, we have a fairly straight line on that FMS. Look at how straight that is. That's taking us directly, it tells me that it's taking us directly along the flight plan. Look to the map on the right, it most certainly is. Let's make that map a little bigger. I should say a little zoomed in a little bit more. And one more zoom here. There we go. Okay. Now, look, there's another arrow on the OBS. Look at that. It's a white arrow and it's perforated. So what does a white perforated arrow mean? That is basically a standby. In other words, it's already picking up something what it's picking up, yeah, it isn't picking up quite yet because we're not close enough, but it does know that we are looking to be landing with an ILS on an ILS runway. It would do the same thing if we were shooting an RNAV GPS approach as well, but this is going to be the old-fashioned basic ILS approach. So here's what we're going to do. Let's look back on our map. As you can see, this magenta line, which is our flight plan, turns white right there. So just shy of the navigation effects YEPGU. What does that do? I'm sorry, I should say, what does that mean? What it means is that's where transition is going to take place. We're going to be transitioning from FMS navigation, which is meaning the flight plan, over to the airplane flying both the localizer and the glide slope of runway 04 right. So when we're at that point, and we'll be leveling off at 2,000 feet long before then. By the way, we're below 18,000, so our barometric pressure needs to go back to what our destination barometric pressure is, which is 29.92 inches of mercury. Cross-check that with the FOs, 29.92, and we're going to right-click the back of the standby ADI, and it's set for 29.92. Alright, so as I was saying, when we get to this point, into this turn, into the approach, this white perforated arrow will begin to show a localizer, and the glide slope in magenta is going to, which is right up here, is going to begin to drop down this line right here. As it does that, that simply tells me that we're going to have to switch our navigation source. And again, right now it's set to FMS. The information, the nav source, will be set to LOC1, which stands for Localizer 1, because we're going to be utilizing the Navigation 1 radio, which the Garmin G5000 automatically tunes for us, and it's nothing we have to think about. All we have to think about is, did it tune to the runway's proper and correct frequency? 13,000, still descending, and looking good. We're getting near 10,000 feet. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead and just turn on the landing lights, because we're practically at 10,000 feet as it is. The taxi light, I don't need to touch that. When the landing gear is extended, the taxi light will automatically turn on, and then it'll be showing that up here as well. Recognition lights, we don't need that. Wing lights, floodlight, logo light, we don't need that. But anti-collision light, we will leave that set to on. And remember the most important rule with regard to speed restriction, that is, below 10,000 feet, do not exceed 250 knots. And the Garmin G5000 knows that very, very well. As you can see, it's pre-programmed itself without me doing anything for 250 knots, and you can see that at the top of the airspeed tape. As we get closer to 10,000, that number should drop. Let's make sure that it does. Just making sure of that. And is it gonna do a good job? Here comes 10,000 feet. 250 on the money. Look at that. That's what I call accuracy right there. That is pretty darn cool. All right. Let's go back down. We need to zoom in on the map just a little bit. We'll see that transition point here shortly. And I can see that the FADEC, which stands for Full Authority Digital Engine Control, engine computer, controlling the airplane speed very, very well. Little on the fast side that allows it to go to 252. I've never seen it do that before. It usually is very, very good about keeping it slow. And it will do that here momentarily because it knows that it has to slow down big time. Because the first fix coming up, we've got that pre-programmed for 190 knots indicated, and we're waiting for that. Let's look at the beautiful island. Looks a little hazy. Don't know why, because there's no weather. But yeah, that looks good. The airport is right over there. The long runway, which I believe is runway 08 right, is a peninsula runway, and that's what you're looking at right there. And yeah, looking good. All right, getting our head back into the flight deck. Now the airplane is beginning to slow it up. And we're going to go ahead and give flaps 1. And the angle of attack indicator just popped up. It does it automatically for landing purposes, and you can see how close you come to a stall as you're coming into land. But I don't utilize that. Now, look at this. The nav source is still set to FMS, but if you look close, we now have that white perforated line that's going to coincide with the white perforated arrow. That means that it's now picking up the signal, which is on the navigational frequency 110.50 for that specific runway, IIUM, and you can see nav1, and our DME, which is distance measuring equipment, set to 15.2, or 50, I'm sorry, right now we're 15.3 nautical miles out, and as soon as we make the turn, that number will begin to get smaller very quickly. Okay, the glide slope is this white diamond. We're actually, the white diamond, by the time we intercept the localizer, this white diamond should be right in the middle. And we should be on speed and on target for runway 04 right. There we go. We are slowing. And we're going to go ahead and change the nav source in just a second here. Let's go ahead and set flaps to 2. And now the airplane is slowing down. Come here, cross. And we're going to go ahead and turn on nav source LOC1. Should have picked it up. There we go. Making sure the approach is armed. And as you can see in the FMA up here, this is the flight mode annunciator. My apologies for not telling you that ahead of time. Localizer is being followed, as is the glide slope. So let's set the go around altitude, which is going to be 4,000 feet. And our go around heading is going to be approximately 042, 042, in case we do have to do a go around. Also known as going missed, for those of you that are in the industry. Runway is not quite in sight yet. I can see runway 08 right, and I can barely make out runway 04 right. It's beginning to come into picture here just a little bit. Alright. And we are 10 nautical miles out. Let's see if we can see it here. There it is. I can see it already. Let's go ahead and select landing gear down. And there's the annoying parking brake that turns on whenever you retract or extend the gear. We'll turn that off. Very annoying. Now there's one very unique feature about this aircraft. Oh, let's go ahead and tell it to slow down to 130 knots is what we need to be at. And we'll go ahead and set flaps to full. Is our thrust reverse. Very, very unique. It automatically determines how much reverse thrust is required based on length of runway and on some other conditions. And that system is controlled right here. If I open that cover and I push that button, that means that when I select reverse thrust, it's going to give me as much reverse thrust that I am inputting as the captain. But we're going to leave that set to on, which is basically automatic. Close the cover on that button. And you'll notice that it isn't going to be utilizing a lot of it. It may, the N1, with regard to the N1 percentage on that, it might give us 41 or 42%, maybe not even that much. All depends on how fast I'm going when I land the aircraft and how much runway is left over. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Okay, 2.5 nautical miles from the runway. And now the autopilot is lining up with the runway even more accurately now. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the auto throttle.
Auto throttle.
Turn that off.
Minimums.
Landing. And I'm going to be turning.
Autopilot.
And I'm controlling both the autopilot as well as the auto throttle. I'm sorry, not the auto throttle. The actual throttle, and it brought us in it was not bringing us in right down the middle of the runway. That's no big deal.
200.
Check. It's acting like there's a wind when I know there isn't any.
100.
All right, engine's going back to idle right about there.
50.
We're gonna flare.
40, 30. 20.
We're gonna allow the plane to settle
10.
in nice and easy. It's called ground effect. And there we are. Thrust reverse, as you can see, unlocked. How much is it gonna give us? Yeah, we landed a little fast. Not gonna make that turn off. So it gave us about, I think it gave us what, 51%? Something like that. And the thrust reversers are now stowed. Alright. We can go ahead and bring up our flaps. And for those of you wondering how I made a fairly smooth landing, well, again, in ground effect is when you allow the airplanes, the air pressure under the wings to form a nice cushion of air between you and the runway, and that is known as ground effect. And if you allow it to build up that little pillow or cushion of air between you and the runway, the airplane will automatically settle itself down onto the runway. But as you can see, at about 10 feet above the runway, I arrested the descent, and the airplane settled onto the runway very nicely. Had a very smooth landing, and I went a little long, but again, that's because I knew I had plenty of runway ahead of me, and that's the reason why the automated power reserve system gave us 52% and 1 on the reverse thrust. Let's very quickly go up here, get our lights situated. The landing lights and the pulse lights do not need to be on, and the anti-collision light does not need to be on either. And we're going to go ahead and turn on the APU. That way, by the time we get to our parking spot, it'll be ready for us to turn off the engines, and we won't lose any electricity or air conditioning in the cabin. That goes for both the flight deck up here, as well as the passenger cabin in the back. And for those of you that are wondering, we did that flight in precisely 30 minutes and 50 seconds. Not bad. Not bad at all. And it looks like it wants us to go here to the left. And in case you're wondering why do I leave the little map running up here in the upper left hand corner, and the airspeed and engine instruments down here in the lower left corner of the monitor, and the magenta, I should say the green or the turquoise taxi arrows. I leave that up there for your benefit, just so you can see where we're going. Or I should say where we are assigned to go. That's not good. The truck is, looks like the truck is part of the building. Hopefully those are types of things that Microsoft and Asobo are working on fixing. And we're going to go ahead and stop the aircraft right about here. Turn off set the parking brake, number 1. Just reassure ourselves that the APU is up and running 100%, which it is. Now back to those 2 buttons that have covers on them. We're going to open both covers, and we're going to click that button to stop, as well as the left one, stop. and those engines are spooling down nicely. And we're going to close those covers. And if we look up here, engines are practically down to 0. Alright. And for the fun of it, let's go over and open the door, the cabin door that is, and welcome you to Honolulu. Okay, that went a little too far there. We need to go this way. And all of you would, and or the passengers would be seated over there, obviously. But let's open the door. And there we go. Welcome to Honolulu. And here we are. Pretty good flight on board a very sharp looking airplane. And in my opinion, the best flying airplane so far in Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. That was just a brief intro as the kind of instruction that I hope all of you will enjoy. And try to make it a little more fun when the flight isn't so short. I would love to read your comments about the flight, what you would like to see in the channel, what you'd like to see me do differently. If you'd like to see me go over something in more detail, I can easily do that. Because I have been in the real aviation industry for well over 2 decades now, and I'm simply utilizing this platform as a way to share my knowledge with all of you out there, hopefully in a unique way that is both informative but also very instructive. And yeah, that is the purpose of this channel. And like I said at the onset, we're going to be doing some flying over in the world of DCS world with third and fourth generation fighter aircraft. And in the real world, we're going to be going fly fishing in the real world. You'll get to see what I look like. And we'll be talking about the similarities between flying planes, as we do, and fly fishing. Believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities between both hobbies, both industries. And but like with this one in particular, with Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, we're going to also be recreating some things that have happened recently in the real aviation world, such as the tragedy that happened in Washington, D.C., when that CRJ had a mid-air collision with a Army helicopter upon approach, and some other situations that should have never happened in aviation. We'll be replicating those here, so that you can all understand what happened, and if it was a pilot error, we'll be reproducing the situation and showing you what the captain or what the flight deck crew should have done in that situation, if it is a situation that calls for that kind of instruction. All right. Well, I hope all of you have a wonderful week, and I would love to again read all of your comments. So we're going to be doing more videos like this, but it all depends on what you, the public, want to see, and I can't do that unless I read those comments down below. So and help us out, please, on hitting that subscribe button below. And we're going to begin making a lot of videos that are hopefully more instructive, and doing in a way that no one else does it. And we're going to be utilizing AI a little bit more, making sure that platform is stable. So it kind of gives you a sense of what it's like to be up in the flight deck with not just me running everything, but also an AI co-pilot as well. So, thank you all very much for watching. Fly safe, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you.